Hello everyone, it's Amy and welcome back for week 161 of Build Your Stash and Craft. Today we are going to make a glue sponge, and these can be used especially, they come in really handy for anything that is really fine and delicate where it's hard to get the glue on there. And so the way that you're going to start is I just start with a regular sponge, regular kitchen sponge, and then in a Loctite container, something that's going to give you a good seal so that your glue does not dry up. And then the way that I make this is I use 3 parts glue to 1 part water. And what I did was I just had a little bit of glue left in my bottle, so I dumped it all in here and let it drain. And so I had this much glue. My glue came right to here. And so I just kind of divided it into 3 pieces. 1, 2, 3. So that's about 3 glues. So then I just went up that same amount. And that's how much I'm going to want to fill it. I'm going to want to fill that last bit with water. 3 glues to 1 water. You can do it by measuring, 3 tablespoons to a tablespoon, or however you want to do it. And then what I did was, because my bottle, I had emptied my bottle as best as I could, I put some water in here and shook it around and got all the glue out of the inside of my bottle. So even my water has a little bit of glue in it. And what I'm going to do is I have to hold this straight. I have to have it flat. And then I'm just going to put water in there till it gets up to that line. Right there. And now I have 3 parts glue and 1 part water. And I just need to mix that up. And then what we're going to want to do is we are going to want to cut our sponge to fit inside of our container that we got. And you can use anything. You could even mix your glue and water right in your container. I just did it in here so that I could see how much I had, because I just wanted to use up what glue I had left. And I didn't want to have too much water in there. When I make water glue, which is what I use for when I decoupage things onto a page, I use 2 parts glue to 1 part water. For my glue sponge, I use 3 parts glue to 1 part water. So you have a little bit more glue than in your water glue. Now, if you find out once you get it made, because this is school glue, so school glue in itself is a little bit thin. If you have like regular Elmer's or something and you think it's just too thick, it's sticking a little too hard and tearing my little fine intricate pieces, put in just mix in a little bit more water. If you think that it's a little bit too thin, then just put in a little bit more glue. And I'll show you how to add more in just a second. All right, so what I'm going to do is I want my sponge to fit into my lid, but also I want it to fit into the base. So no matter what, it should fit in both places. So I'm just going to hold my sponge here, and this has a funny curve to it just because that's all they had at the Dollar Tree. So I'm not going to go somewhere else and spend more money just so that I get a rectangular sponge. I just need one that fits in here. And that fits in there nicely. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in the bottom so that I can work my glue into it. Now, you can do this any way you want to. You can use a credit card and push on it to get it to soak in. I usually just use my hands. I do want to let me grab a piece of cardboard here. I want to stir this up just a little bit better, though, because I very possibly am not going to need all of this. So I do want to make sure that it's mixed well, so that if I don't need it all, I don't have like a whole bunch of glue left in my container here and most of the water went onto my sponge. I just want it to be a good mix. And then if I don't use it all, what I will do is I will put this in with my water glue. I'll just add a little bit more water to it and just dump it in the container that holds my water glue, because I use a lot of that. And you're really not going to need any extra of this on hand. If you ever need any more, you can just add a little bit more to your sponge, but it's not like something you're going to want to save. At least I don't. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to pour it on top of your sponge until your sponge is pretty covered, and then just work it in. And now you could also wet your sponge first, but that puts a little bit more water in your glue, which is totally fine. But you don't want your glue to be too watered down, because you're going to use this for really fine paper cutouts and that type of thing. And so you don't want to get those too wet. Or things like doilies, things that you have that just have a lot of gap area and a lot of small areas where it's really hard to take a bottle of glue and get it in all those areas. I'm just kind of wiping off the little bit of excess that I have in the corners. Okay, and then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to kind of squeeze it to see if it looks like it's got a lot of glue in it. And it does. So I think that I have plenty of glue in here for now. I can always add more later. Now, if you feel that you need to add more, if you just think that you've used it up or it's not wet enough, all you need to do is you can just put a little bit of glue. Just take your glue right from your container. I'm going to be right back because I'm going to go wash my hands off and grab myself a paper towel. I'll be back in just a second. Okay, I am back. Sorry about that. Now, what I was saying was, if you need to add a little bit, you can just take your glue bottle and just squeeze a little bit on top, and then spritz it with a couple sprays of water, so that you have some glue and some water. But you just put a little on the top, and then just use something that you have to spread it around, and then just get it worked in. Once you get it worked in well, then your sponge will have the glue there. And what I usually do is, when I first get it out, I take it out and I turn it over to whatever side was on the bottom. I put that on the top. And that way I know that I've got most of my glue here, because it's going to settle to the bottom. And then what you use it for is just, I'm going to start with a little square of paper. Easiest way to make a square is to just fold up a triangle and then cut it off. And then when you have little tiny intricate things, like little tiny doilies or die cuts, you know, like sometimes you get the butterfly die cuts that are very, very frilly. It's hard to get the glue all over the whole thing so that it sticks down nicely. And then what I usually do is, when I'm doing something like this, a nice way to get like a bit of a different pattern so it's not all the same, is I just cut my center. And I'm going to just try and cut some so that I have some really fine pieces here so that you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I'm not going to be super fancy about my design for time's sake, but you can make your own little doilies and little lace cuts very simply this way. Same way you would make a snowflake when you were a little kid, and in our Journaling on a Budget we made doilies this way. And then what I do, instead of cutting this side together so that all of those look the same, I usually open it up. And I do the center one first, because if you were to do this side and then this side, and then when you close it up and go to cut it, you can see what you've cut here, so you don't cut into it, but you can't see what you cut on the bottom. So you do the middle one first, and then open it up, and then go ahead and do each side a little bit differently, so that you have a little bit of a different pattern. And like I said, this is not going to be super intricate, but I did want to get some fine pieces so you can see how well this works. And you can buy glue pads at the craft stores, but the last one that I saw was I think it was $7. And to me, $7 for glue on a sponge. This cost us $1 for the glue, which I just used the glue I had left, and $1 for the sponge, and $1 for the container. So if you had to start completely from scratch because you didn't have any glue, it would cost you $3. And then you've got all that glue left that you can use to refill it and to refill it and to refill it. And you know, you're not spending anywhere near $7. And the only thing is, you really don't want to get all these little pieces on your glue sponge because they'll stick. Okay, I'll finish this up quick. You don't need to sit here and watch me cutting. You've seen this before, and you've done this before, I'm sure, but there. Okay, so you've got a die cutting machine. You have intricate die cuts, or you cut snowflakes, or you cut doilies, or you have a butterfly punch that's really, really lacy. Anything that's really lacy is what this is great for. And so here we go. Now we've got all of these little lines. Now to take our glue bottle and to try and get glue on each one of those lines and to spread it out without pulling on these, and this is not as delicate as like some die cuts and punches are. And then you want to put that on a card. So you just take your cutout, and you can do this many different ways. And that's why I like to have just this paper towel. I washed my hands and then I dried my hands on it, so it's damp. And what I do is I either just use my hands and just push on it, and you don't want to continue doing like I just did. You just want to push on it once, because what I just did was I got glue all over the top. Turn it around and do this side. You want to just go ahead and just push it down. And like my thumb, I know is dry, and I didn't push it down over there, so I'm going to do that. And you don't want to push too hard because you don't want that glue squishing out through the top. And then you just take this. Now you have glue all over the back. And you just take that and you put it on your card. You put it on your journal page. You put it on your piece of mixed media. Give it a good press and let it dry. And you now have, that is really, really well adhered to your paper. And once you let it dry, you're not going to have bunches of little parts that are going to catch. And even something like, this is one I was working on earlier. This is the edge that I cut off of it. And you want to get glue on that. You can just go ahead. You can use your hands. You can use anything to push it down. And if you use something like a credit card, you can turn it and use different sides of the credit card so that you don't get the glue all over the top of your, and then you just have your paper towel there so that you can wipe that off. And so let's say you have a little frame that you want to put on something. And there you go. Give it a good press. Okay, now I'll show you that I did get a little teeny tiny bit of glue right there. But if I had used my glue bottle and put glue all over this whole thing, I would have had glue squishing out under all of the edges. And so that is what your glue sponge is for. It's to do nice intricate gluing. And really, it doesn't have to be that, though. If you just, you just have some things that you want to glue down. Let's say that this is a bird. And I cut him out, I punched him out or something, and I want to glue him down, and I have a whole bunch of them to do. You can just go ahead and take them and use your glue sponge. And then if you've got glue all over your hands, you don't want to get it on your card. And just glue them where you want them without getting glue everywhere, so long as you're just a little bit careful. I mean, I'm doing this fast and just putting it on there. I got a little bit more glue right there. But that's it. And that's just so simple. And then what I do, and just because I get a little bit picky, I will wind up washing this out. Don't dump it down your sink. Just give it a toss outside or dump it in some kitty litter to dry up and then throw the clumps out. But I take my sponge and I normally put it in the bottom. You don't have to do that. You know, you can leave it right there. And then the other thing that I do is just take a piece of plastic. This is just one of our sandwich bags that we bought when I don't remember even what we bought them for, but so I'm just going to take a piece of plastic and cut it about the size of my sponge. And it needs to be a little bit skinnier. And then just set it on top. It just kind of holds some of that moisture in there. Just like that. I'm not wrapping it around the sides. I'm not sticking it inside because just like your water glue, I find if you have a good airtight container, it doesn't dry up. I'm going to show you one here. I made this one about 3 years ago. And every once in a while I add a little bit of glue and water to it, but this is still sticky. It's still got glue on it. It's still wet, and I still use it. And it's been a while since I've refreshed it. And what I do a lot of times, like I said, is I just take it and flip it over and use the side that I know is the most wet. And this was an odd sponge that I had, so I had to cut it to fit, and it's kind of funny shaped, but it doesn't matter because it works no matter what. But so like I said, this one has just been sitting in my art room. I'm not sure the last time I used it. It's been quite a while, and it's still not dried up. So they last pretty good, and if you need to just refresh them a little bit, you just refresh them a little bit. Just make sure that you have a good airtight kind of lock to it, and then you should be just fine. Because if we're to dry out 100%, I'm not so sure that you could wet it enough to get it back. You'd have to just get a new sponge and make some more, but it's still so cheap. You've got your container. This came with 2 sponges, so you know you're still going to be saving a lot of money. So that is our project for this week. I really do like using these. I use them quite often, and like I said, I have this one that I got out of my art room. I have another one in the other room, which is the one I've been using. So that's why I said I don't know how long it's been since I've used that one. But they work great for intricate gluing. For next week, I got these at the Dollar Tree. They're called counting chips. You also can find them at places. They're called bingo chips. And they're just little clear plastic chips, about the size of a coin. And so we're going to need these and some black fingernail polish. And that's what we'll need for next week. We'll need some of our paper and our clear fingernail polish. I think that's about it. Our scissors, you know, just the odds and ends that we already have. But the things that we'll need to pick up that you may not have in your stash are the clear chips, either bingo chips or counting chips, and some fingernail polish. So that's $2, and that'll put $3 in our bank. And so after next week, we will have $30 left in our bank. So I hope that you enjoyed the glued sponge today. Something so simple to make and wonderful to use. Thank you very much for stopping by. I really do appreciate it, and I hope that you all have an outstanding day. Bye-bye.